Alright, so this video we're going to look at finding the 5 remaining trig functions, and they give us cotangent alpha is negative 1/3. Alright, so I have a video where I did something similar to this, where what we did is we plotted it and we did a triangle, and we got the other sides of the triangle and found them like that. Okay, but sometimes in the books, in the textbooks, they ask you to find the 5 remaining trig functions using identities. So that's how we're going to work this one. All right, so let's look. I've got cotangent alpha is negative 1/3, and alpha is in the second quadrant. Okay, so let's find the 5 remaining trig functions. Well, since I know cotangent, I can easily find tangent. So tangent alpha, well, remember, tangent is just the reciprocal of cotangent. So tangent is negative 3. Alright, so now we have tangent. So what identity do we have where we can find something else? Well, for since I know tangent, I can use the identity 1 plus tangent squared alpha is equal to secant squared alpha, and this way I can find secant squared. Alright, so I get 1 plus tangent squared. So this tangent squared alpha, remember that tangent squared alpha is the same thing as tangent alpha, all of that squared. And what I'm doing, in the place of tangent alpha, I'm going to put negative 3. So see, if I put the negative 3 in here for tangent alpha, that's negative 3 squared. And so that's going to be plus negative 3 squared equals secant squared alpha. And so this is going to be 1 plus 9 equals secant squared alpha. So 10 is equal to secant squared alpha, and then I'm going to use the square root property. So secant alpha is negative square root of 10, or secant alpha is positive square root of 10. Alright, now remember, alpha is in the second quadrant. Okay, so what do we know? In the second quadrant, sine and cosecant are the only ones positive in the second quadrant. You remember this? All students take calculus. So we got sine and cosecant are positive here. So yeah, sine and cosecant. So we know that all the other trig functions are negative in the second quadrant. So secant alpha would be the negative square root of 10. So we know this one is not an option. So secant alpha is negative square root of 10. Alright, now from this, since we know secant alpha, we can get cosine alpha. And cosine alpha is what? It's the reciprocal of secant. So that's negative 1 over square root of 10. And then if we rationalize the denominator, that's going to be negative square root of 10 over 10. Alright, so let's see. We've got tangent, secant, cosecant. The only ones left are sine and cosecant. Well, there's a couple of ways we could go. We could get cosecant by using the identity with cotangent alpha, or we can find sine using the fact that we know sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. So let's do that. So we have sine squared alpha plus cosine squared alpha equals 1. So that gives me sine squared alpha plus, and now in the place of cosine alpha, well, cosine alpha is negative square root of 10 over 10. Now, excuse me, what you need to understand is that when we plug in the value of cosine, we can either plug in this value or this value. Okay, a lot of times when we're plugging the numbers in, a lot of times it's easier to plug in the value where the denominator is not rationalized. Okay, and if you prefer to plug this in, that's fine, you'll get the same answer. Okay, but a lot of times it's easier just to plug this one in. So let's plug this in. So that's going to be negative 1 over square root of 10 squared equals 1. And so we have sine squared alpha plus, and then this squared is 1 over 10 equals 1. And then we will subtract 1 over 10 to both sides. And so that's going to give me sine squared alpha equals, and that's going to be 9 over 10. Alright, so using the square root property again, we're going to get sine alpha equals 3 over square root of 10, or I guess we can put the negative first, negative 3 over square root of 10, or sine alpha is 3 over square root of 10. Alright, so remember back from the problem, alpha is in the second quadrant, and in the second quadrant, sine is positive. Okay, so we know this is not our solution, and rationalizing denominator. Okay, so I'm going to get 3 square root of 10 over 10. And so there's sine alpha. Now, all we have left is cosecant alpha. Well, we know that cosecant alpha is just the reciprocal of sine. Now, what I would recommend here, instead of taking the reciprocal of this, because if we take the reciprocal of this, look what we'll get. We'll get 10 over 3 square root of 10. Then we'll have to rationalize the denominator. So instead of taking the reciprocal of this, let's take the reciprocal of 3 over square root of 10 before we rationalize the denominator. So taking the reciprocal here, that's just going to be square root of 10 over 3. And you can see now we don't have to worry about rationalizing the denominator. And even if we did do this one, look, if we rationalize denominator, we're going to get what? 10 square root of 10 over 3 times, and then square root of 10 times square root of 10 is 10. Those cancel. Square root of 10 over 3. You get the same thing. Okay? Alright, so let's see, we've got cosecant alpha, we've got sine alpha, we've got cosine alpha, we got secant alpha, and we have tangent alpha. So that's the 5 remaining trig functions. Alright, so yeah, this method is a little bit more to it than drawing it out and doing a triangle. And I do have a video on that. You can check it out. But you know, sometimes the books ask you to do it this way, and also it's a good way to practice with the identities and get familiar with them. So you know, but either way will give you the same results. Alright, so hopefully this video helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, thanks.